guys, welcome to my March wrap-up. So I've got a stack of books to go through with you today, but these are all the books that I have read in March. So I'm going to start off with my stats, and I'm going to paste my little graphics up here, but I've got it written on a handy scrap of paper. So to start off, I read 13 books this month. I don't know how many pages that is, but it's quite a lot. Genre-wise, I read four contemporary romances, 3 fantasies, 2 fantasy romances, 1 middle grade, 1 horror, and 2 contemporaries. Star rating, I gave 2 books 5 stars, 5 books 4.5 stars, 4 books 4 stars, 1 book 3.5 stars, and 1 book 3 stars. And the formats, I read 7 books physically, 4 digitally, and 2 audio. Although one of them I did read as mixed media, but I've counted it as physical because I just have. Right, let's get started. I have my stack of books ready. As usual, a number of these, quite a lot of these I've read for work. So because I am being paid to work on these books, I'm not going to be giving you star ratings or my review. I'm just going to be telling you what the book is about. I'm going to attempt to do these in the order that I read them, which means I need to put them in the order that I read them. Right, so I'm going to attempt, like I said, to go through these in the order that I read them and tell you a bit about them. Like I said, some of these ones I have worked on, so I'm not going to be giving you my reviews and my ratings for all of them. So the first book I read in March was Rooftopers by Katherine Rundell. This is a book I worked on, so I'm not going to be giving you my ratings on this one, but it is a middle grade about Sophie, who was found floating in the sea as a child after a shipwreck, and she's grown up with Charles, who's sort of become her adoptive parent. They run away to Paris when Sophie is 11, when the government are going to take her away from him, and are on the hunt to find her mother. It's such a beautiful story. It's a middle grade, and I highly, highly recommend this if you've got kids who are sort of, I would say, between about 8 and 12. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous story. I really enjoyed it. Next, I read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This book I have put off reading for at least 2 years. When did it come out? I want to say it came out in 2021. Yeah, this is the hardback. I got it when it was released, and I've only just got around to reading it. I read this one on audio, and it was fabulous. I really loved it. I don't know whether it's because I read it on audio rather than physically, but it didn't emotionally hit me as much as Cerulean Sea did. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I did genuinely enjoy this one a lot. It just didn't hit me in the feels quite as much as I was expecting it to do. I think as well, because I've been putting off reading this one for so long, I'd hyped it up so much in my head. I'd got such high expectations that unfortunately it just didn't quite hit that sillily high level of expectations I had. But still, 4.5 is a seriously good book. So enjoyed that one. Next, I read Jo Abercrombie, The Blade Itself. This one is the first book in the First Law series, and I'm reading this as part of Becca and the Books catch-up book club for First Law along. I really enjoyed this one. Okay, so I gave this one 4.5 stars. However, I can't tell you what it's about because I don't know what it's about. I have no idea what the plot is. So in this one, we follow 3 main characters. We've got Logan, who is a barbarian from the north. We've got Glokta, who is a inquisitor/torturer. And we've got Giselle, who is a spoiled champion fencer. And these 3 characters don't seem to have anything in common, particularly. There is a wizard whose name I don't remember. Let me see if I can find the wizard's name. It begins with a B. Bayaz. So there is this wizard called Bayaz who kind of meets Logan and sort of takes Logan under his wing. Logan becomes part of his group anyway. I don't know whether he's trying to bring magic back, whether he's wanting to get involved in the magic in the war that is happening. There's a war brewing between the Union, who Glokta and Jayez are part of, and the North, that Logan is part of, but he doesn't support the rulers of the North. He is in fact enemies of the rulers of the North. It's very, I like I said, I don't know what the plot is to this one yet, but I really enjoyed it. I'm hoping that the plot is a little bit more clear in the next one, because then I might be able to actually give some form of description on what it's about. But like I said, it was 4.5. I really, really enjoyed it. Next, I read Again Rachel by Marian Keyes. So this was one that I read for work. I'm going to pop the cover up here. I did really like this one. I was a little bit dubious going in because Marian Keyes isn't an author I've read from before. This one was funny. It was hard hitting. It really, like, there are some serious content warnings for this one, and I would say if you're interested in reading it, please do check out the content warnings, especially if you are at all impacted by addiction, relapse, or death of a child. It really hit me, and I'm not impacted by any of those things. But yeah, really fantastic writing. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm actually thinking of reading more Marian Keyes now because I enjoyed that one so much. I also read The Vintage Shop of Second Chances by Libby Page, which again I'll pop up here. Again, this is one that I read for work. I really liked this one. This one follows three main characters. So we've got Lou, who has lost her mother and is setting up a vintage clothes shop, sort of following her dreams, setting up a vintage clothes shop in the town of Frome in Somerset. We've got Maggie, who is a 70-year-old lady who's recently divorced and finds a kind of new lease of life by helping Lou with the clothes shop. And then we have got, what is the third character's name? Can't remember the third character's name, that's really bad. Who is an American, and she finds out something that kind of completely rocks her worldview, her view of herself, and there is a link to the clothes shop. The three characters all end up becoming interconnected, they all become friends. It's just such a beautiful book. It made me cry. I mean, again, kind of standard. Most things make me cry. But I really genuinely enjoyed it. I thought it was such a fun read, and I highly recommend it if you want a kind of summer beach read. It's fantastic. Next, I read Guild by Raven Kennedy. Again, this is one for work. Like I said, most of the books this month were ones for work, so I'm not going to be being able to give you too much information on any of them. Guild I really liked. I feel like a broken record right now, but I had a really good reading month, as you could tell by my stats at the beginning. So Guild follows Oren. Yeah. Oren, who is gold touched by King Midas. It's a King Midas retelling. But because she has been touched by Midas, she is kept in a gilded cage as basically Midas's favourite pet, favourite whore, basically. So it is a very smutty book. King Midas keeps many royal saddles, who are people that he rides. Oren is his favourite one of them, and so no one else is allowed to touch her until he sells her to a rival king for one night. That kind of leads into a whole thing, and we end up with Oren leaving the palace, travelling to a new kingdom. And again, stuff happens. It was really, really good. I really liked Oren. I thought she was a really strong character. I liked her relationship with Midas, which is so toxic. But I really liked how that was kind of shown. It kind of gave me a sort of view of, it felt like it was talking about Stockholm Syndrome without calling it that. And I liked that was shown. I'm really excited to carry on this series. I'm excited something that happens at the end and a character that we meet at the end makes me very, very keen to continue this series and see where that goes. Tea break. The next book I read is another one for work, which is The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. I know I said I don't give my workbooks, I won't be giving you my workbooks reviews or ratings, but I'm going to make an exception to this one. This one was 5 stars. I loved this. This is my top read of the month. So The Love Wager follows Hallie and Jack. They meet at a wedding where Hallie is working, Jack is the best man. They end up hooking up. She sneaks out of his hotel room in the morning and she's like, oh my God, I am at rock bottom. I had a one night stand with a man. I don't even know his last name. And like, seriously, yeah, girl, I feel ya. They end up then matching on a dating site and agree that they're not into each other. That's just not going to happen. But they make this wager where they basically bet each other who's going to fall in love first. And they've got like pretty good stakes. I think he's offering all of his air miles and I can't remember what it is that she's offering. But they end up basically sort of tag teaming on dates. They go speed dating together and they're basically just working to help the other find love. However, it's a romance. It is a friends to lovers and it's just so good. There's some fantastic angst in this. Some of the tropes are brilliant. There's fake dating. There's only one bed. Like I said, it's friends to lovers, and it's just so good. I adored it. I am going to be looking up more of Lynn Painter's work. She wrote Mr. Wrong Number. I am going to be buying that immediately. Like I said, this is 5 stars. I think I binged this in a day and I just can't fault it. It was fantastic. Highly recommend. The next one I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to actually cross off the books that I've mentioned because I didn't write them in order. And I don't know what I've said and what I haven't said about. I've done those two. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is The Neighbour Favour by Christina Forrest. Again, one for work. I loved it. So good. The romance books I read this month were top tier. They were fantastic and they were all workbooks. So I'm sorry, I can't, with the exception of The Love Wager, I can't give too much information on them. The Neighbour Favour follows Lily and Nick. Lily has this favourite fantasy book written by this author called N.R. Strickland. And she messages him and they end up in this kind of email conversation. He messages back. They agree to meet and then they agree to meet via Zoom, agree to meet on a Zoom date. And then he just disappears. He ghosts her. He never messages her again. So she ends up kind of hating this dude. Like, what a dick. In the future, Bella, out the way, move your bum. We're kind of going like, I think about a couple of years later. She has a new neighbour called Nick. And they meet and sparks fly. They go on a date. He kisses her. Then as they sort of start to get to know each other a little bit more, Nick, who is the author, N.R. Strickland, realises, oh my God, this is that girl that I was talking to. So he's then like, no, look, we can't be together. Bella, go away. We can't be together. We can only be friends. So there's this kind of endless friendship. It is super cute. There's like, again, there's friends to lovers. I think there's fake dating in this one. There's kind of, he's setting her up with someone else. It's just so good. I had a lot of fun reading this book and I do highly recommend. The next one on the romance books that I have read for work is A Long Time Coming by Megan Quinn. This one is another friends to lovers. And this one is kind of the one that made me go, do you know what? Friends to lovers is my jam. I think I prefer friends to lovers over enemies to lovers. The angst in this book is just top tier. Bella, get your tail out of my face. I'm trying to film. But yes, the angst in A Long Time Coming is so good. So this is the third in a series about some rich brothers. I don't know what the series is called. But with this one, Breaker. So in this one, this is the third in a series following three brothers. This one follows Breaker, who is best friends with Leah. Leah is engaged to this guy that Breaker does not like. And like I said, the angst, the friends to lovers angst in this one is just so good. Breaker's discussions with his brothers about, oh my God, I think I'm in love with her. Oh, it's so good. So good. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this book, so recommend this one too. I've then got two more romances that I'm going to quickly talk about while we're on the topic of the romances that I'm working on for work. So I've got I'll Always Be With You. Can't remember who the author of this one is, but I'm going to pop it up there. So this one is toxic. I loved it, but I think that says more about me than anything else. So this one we follow our two main characters. So we've got West and we've got Carolina, I think it is. It is a prima donna ballerina. They meet in Paris and they hook up. So this is like the first I would say check content warnings on this book. The cover and the title and nothing kind of gives you an indication to the amount of toxicity in this book. And like I said, there is quite a lot of content warnings that I think people need to be aware of. So they hook up, but they are both 17, which is a little bit icky. They then end up going to the same school the following year. So West had lied and said that he'd graduated already. Carolina, her family owns the school, so she was like, well, I'm never going there. Anyway, they both end up in school. It then turns into a bit of a bully romance, and it's, again, content warnings. We then end up with a very cute, fluffy romance by the end of it. But like I said, probably the first 200 pages, there was a lot of toxicity. So content warnings, like I said off the top of my head, we've got underage sex, we've got bully romance, we've got revenge porn. There's an element of consensual BDSM, not to a full sort of BDSM level, but kind of like sort of like just like dominant sex. But again, bearing in mind the age of the characters, I feel like it needs content warning. I did genuinely love this book. I wasn't expecting to, and when I first started it, I was like, oh my God, what am I reading? But the further I got in, the more I just fell in love with the characters. I fell in love with the plot. And this is another one that I ended up giving 5 stars, which I know I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, because I'm like, it's really, really toxic, but it's good. Like, it's toxic, but it's good. So I did absolutely love it to pieces, but I would say just do be careful going in. And then the last romance book that I'm going to talk about is A Curse of Saints. And again, I can't remember the author, but I'm going to pop the cover up here. So this one is a fantasy romance following Aya and Will. This one reminded me quite a lot of the Grishaverse. So there is magic, and the magic, you kind of have an affinity to like a certain sense. So Will can feel people's emotions. I think Aya can tell when people lie, if I'm remembering correctly. And they end up having to go to another kingdom. And there is this whole, the fantasy, kind of the classic fantasy plot line of, kingdoms at war, and who can you trust, who can you not trust. This is also an enemies to lovers between Aya and Will. They have been rivals since they joined the academy. But yeah, it was a really fun fantasy romance, and it's one that I would recommend if you liked the Grishaverse but you wanted it to be a slightly more adult. You might enjoy this one. Next, moving completely away from the fantasy, and well, no, not from the fantasy, moving completely away from the romance, what I mean to say, I read How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I'll pop it up here. I listened to this one on audio, so I should just preface this by saying I don't read horror. I don't watch horror. Horror is not a genre I enjoy, but I was getting FOMO because everyone else has read Grady Hendrix and I haven't, so I thought I'd join the crowd. So please do take my views on this one with a massive handful of salt, because like I said, I am not a horror reader. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I liked it, but, and that for me is like the kind of like the issue here. Like it was fun. It was ridiculous at times, and I think that's where it kind of dropped in the ratings for me, because there are parts that, and again with horror I would expect to like have to just, you know, allow some disbelief in there, but there were points when it went so far I was like, what even is happening now? The first part I did like, where we've got the brother and the sister, and that their parents have died, they're having to sell the house, and they are sort of like arguing about this, you know, about the house, what, you know, what do we sell? There's a lot of tension there. And I mean, I would say that, and I can understand why it's called How to Sell a Haunted House. It sounds good, but I mean, it's more of a possessed house than a haunted house. But still, regardless, I liked the start. It got more and more ridiculous as we got further into the book. And I feel like, and again, this is where I found it difficult to suspend my disbelief for the whole thing, because there are parts where I was like, surely someone who has been affected by this possessed puppet is going to like say, wait, hang on, this puppet is possessed. Surely at some point someone is going to mention something, but it seems like everyone in this puppet has been through quite a few people. Everyone's like, oh no, we just pretend it didn't happen, which is a bit weird. So yeah, I liked it. I'm not sure I'm going to read more Grady Hendrix. I might. I'd never say never. Yeah, he's not going to be like a new favourite author or anything, but it was a fun campy read, and I'm glad I read it. And I think that is nearly it. Yes, the last book that I read this month was The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. This is the second book in the Wheel of Time series. Okay, so I started reading this one physically, but I'm reading this series as part of the Wheel of Time Along, hosted by Sandra at Got a Thing for Things, and the live show is quite early in April, and up to literally like about 4 days before the end of March, I was at 200, like barely even hitting the 200 page mark, and I was like, I'm struggling. So I switched to audiobook, and I read probably about the last 400 pages via audio. I really like the audiobook, I will say, but because I was listening to it while I was working and I was listening to it on 2x speed, I did kind of skip a few parts. So there are some parts in the middle that I feel like might come up in discussions and I'm going to be like, wait, what? But I liked it. I gave this one 4 stars. I did enjoy it a lot. So with this one, we are following on from the events at the end of The Eye of the World. We've discovered that Rand can channel the magic. We've got Egwene and Nynaeve who have gone to the tower to train to be Aes Sedai. Matt is struggling without his evil dagger. He needs to also go to the Aes Sedai to be cured and be able to be separated from his evil dagger. And Perrin's just kind of like chilling out in the background, to be honest. So they're all at this town that they were at the end of the last one, which is like on the borderlands. I can't remember what it's called. And they're just kind of chilling there. And I don't know if this is just because I read the beginning quite a while ago and I've forgotten, or because it was in the last book and I've forgotten. But for some reason, everyone thinks Rand is a lord. Don't know why. And he's kind of playing that up as well, which again, I don't really know why. They then, the Great Hunt itself is for the Horn of Valere. And when this horn is sounded, it will raise an army of like great famous soldiers who will fight on the side of whoever blew the horn. Tea break. So our three little dudes go on this quest to find the horn. They're all kind of like, basically because Rand is pretending to be a lord, Perrin and Mat are like, what are you doing? You're a dick. And Rand has been kind of rude to them as well, and so they're not friends at the moment. Also Loel, the ogre, is still there. He's fab. He's probably my favourite character. More plot than book one, which was just a lot of walking. This was still a lot of walking from point A to point B, but there were some things that were happening as we walked from point A to point B. And then by the end, Rand has declared himself as the Dragon Reborn, which again, we knew he was. I did enjoy it. This one did